Hi everybody! So today I'm going to show you how to create the Minion wearing his blue overalls, designed by Jess Davies, also known as CraftLover17 on Instagram. For his goggles, it's up to you if you want to add one, or you can use King Bob's where you're adding two, and you can find that in King Bob's part 2 of 4. It's just adding another one and sewing it together. For the E-beads, I'm using small little black ones. You'll need 3 for his pocket. If you don't have the E-beads, just use a black band and wrap it around your hook 4 times. So the rest of the E-beads, where there's about 11 right here, I'm using them in the hair. If you are giving this to a small child, please don't add the E-beads. The E-beads are just helping the hair to stand up. So that's up to you, but please don't add them if you're giving it to a small child. Next is the 4 buttons in the front and the back. That's optional, so if you have that. So I do hope you enjoy, and let's get started. Round 1 of his suit, what we're going to do is 8 single crochets in the magic ring. So I'm going to use the bottom part of my loom, and I'm going to take my first band and wrap it around the bottom peg 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. Now you're going to bring 8 bands through, one at a time. So with your hook, reach in, this is your cap band, and you're going to bring your first band through, put the other end on your hook, and bring your loop over, and bring your band to the side. Back in for your second band to bring through, on your hook, and bring these 2 loops over, and bring it to the side. Back in, and you're just repeating 2 loops over, and bring it to the side. And you're just going to continue. And 2 loops over. And the last one. Now you want to attach the stitch marker to the band that's around your hook and remove off the loom. Move your bands around so that they're nice and even, and you should have 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is on your hook. For round 2, we're going to add 2 bands to each chain around. So 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, all the way around until you get to your stitch marker. At the end of round 2, you're going to have 16 stitches. So let's go in our first chain, and we're going to add 2 bands, one at a time. So you want to bring the first one through on your hook and slide, and then go back in that same chain to add your second band. And repeat the next chain with 2 bands, one at a time. Back in. And keep going. So on the next chain, all the way until you get to the stitch marker. And then the last stitch with 2 bands. So again, you should have 16 stitches. Remove your stitch marker and add it to the band that's around your hook. For round 3, the pattern is 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way around. You're going to repeat this pattern 8 times. And at the end of round 3, you're going to have 24 stitches. So let's go on our first chain, not where it's getting pulled, and you're adding 1 band. The next chain with 2 bands, 1 at a time. Back in. And just repeat, 1, 2. The next chain. And repeat, 1 single crochet and then 1 increase. Just repeat this pattern all the way until you get to the stitch marker. Repeat. And repeat one more time. So you should have 24 stitches. Remove your stitch marker and add it to the band that's around your hook. For round 4, we're going to increase this round to 32 stitches. So the pattern is 2 single crochets followed by an increase. So 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, all the way around until you get to the stitch marker. You're going to repeat this pattern 8 times. At the end of round 4, you're going to have the 32 stitches. So let's go in our first chain, not where it's getting pulled, and adding 1 band. So 1 single crochet. The next stitch, 1. And then on your third stitch, you're adding 2 bands 1 at a time. So there's your increase. Back in. And repeat, 1, 1, 2. Back in. And repeat. Just continue until you get to the stitch marker. My dog's starting to bark. So you should have 32 stitches. Remove your stitch marker and add it to the band that's around your hook. For round 5, we're going to increase on every 8th stitch. So you're going to do 7 single crochets, 1 band in the first 7 chains, and then on your 8th chain, you're going to add 2 bands. You're going to repeat this 4 times, and at the end of round 5, you're going to have 36 stitches. So let's go in our first 7 chains with 1 band. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So starting in the first chain, not where it's getting pulled, and bringing 1 band through. And repeat. So we just did 7 single crochets, and on the 8th chain, you're going to bring 2 bands through, 1 at a time. Back in. And now you're going to repeat the same thing. So 1 band in the first 7 chains. The 8th chain, 2 bands. And repeat. One more time. You should have 36 stitches. Remove your stitch marker and add it to the band around your hook. For round 6, 7, and 8, we're going to do 36 single crochets. So you're adding 1 band to each chain around. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, all the way around. At the end of round 8, so your last band, you're going to do a slip knot to tie it closed. I will come back for that. So for round 6, I'm going to do round 6, and then you're going to pause the video for round 7 and 8. So just going in the first chain, not where it's getting pulled, and you're going to bring 1 band through. each chain around. So at the end of each round, you should have 36 stitches. So each one of my piles, I have 36 bands. I always leave my C-clips on when I'm doing the same thing for the rounds. It's just so I know how many rounds that I did. So you could do that too by just adding another stitch marker. And then you can remove them after. So the last stitch, so that was 36 stitches. You're going to notice that it's going to curl, and that's okay. You're going to either remove this and attach it to the band that's around your hook, or you can attach another stitch marker. Pause the video and come back to me when you're completed round 7 and 8. So I'm at the last band. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hook through the last chain and bring my band through all of the loops to do a slip knot to tie it closed. So grabbing the end and slide. And then you can remove your stitch markers if you left them on. I've already removed them. And then put this to the side. Round 1 of the body, we're going to do 8 single crochets in the magic ring. So I'm going to take my first band and wrap it around the bottom peg 3 times. 1, 2, okay, 1, 2, and 3. Now you're going to pull 8 bands through, 1 at a time. So reach in, bring your first band through, put the other end on your hook, and bring your loop over. Bring it to the side. Go back in for your second band to bring through, put the other end on your hook. You have 3 loops, so bring these 2 over the one that was at the end. Bring it to the side. Go back in, do the same thing on your hook, and 2 loops over. Bring it to the side. You want to just continue bringing your band through on your hook and 2 loops over. Now attach your stitch marker to that band that's around your hook, and you can remove it off the loom. You should have 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is on your hook. For round 2, we're going to add 2 bands to each chain. So you're just going to increase on each chain around. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, all the way around. At the end of round 2, you will have 16 stitches. So let's go on our first chain, and you're going to add 2 bands, one at a time. Back in for your second band. Now moving on to your next chain with 2 bands, one at a time. Back in. That same chain to pull your second band through, and continue on to the next chain with 2 bands. You're just going to repeat all the way until you get to the stitch marker. Back in. And the last chain, where your stitch marker is, you're adding 2 bands. So now you should have 16 stitches. Remove your stitch marker and add it to the band that's around your hook. For round 3, we're going to increase this round. So the pattern is 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way around. At the end of round 3, you will have 24 stitches. So you're just adding 2 bands in every second chain. So in my first stitch, not where it's getting pulled, you're adding 1 band. Chain 2, the next chain with 2 bands, one at a time. Back in. So I'm just doing an increase. So that's giving us an extra stitch. Now you're going to repeat 1, 2. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets in the next. And just repeat 1, 2. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets in the next. Back in. Now you just want to continue until you get to the stitch marker. So just follow the pattern. And the last stitch, where the stitch marker is, you're adding 2 bands. So again, you should have 24 stitches. Remove your stitch marker and add it to the band that's around your hook. For round 4, we're going to increase on every 3rd stitch. So that means 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. You're going to repeat this all the way until you get to the stitch marker. At the end of round 4, you're going to have 32 stitches. So let's go on our first chain, not where it's getting pulled, and we're going to do a single crochet, so adding 1 band. The next chain, chain 2 with 1 band. And chain 3, you're adding 2 bands, one at a time. back in, that same chain for your second band. And you're just going to repeat 1, 1, 2. Back in. And repeat 1, 1, 2. And again, so you're just going to repeat all the way until you get to the stitch marker. So I'm almost done. I have one more section, and I can see that was a jelly band. That's okay. Then 1, 1, 2. I couldn't tell I used a jelly band. So now you should have 32 stitches. Remove that stitch marker and add it to the band that's around your hug. For round 5, we're going to increase to 36 stitches. This is going to be our last increase round. So this is the pattern. You're going to do 7 single crochets. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So 7 single crochets followed by an increase. So you're increasing on every 8th stitch. This means you're going to do this 4 times. So at the end of round 5, you're going to have 36 stitches. So let's go on the first 7 chains with 1 band. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. You're going all the way up to 7 chains with 1 band. Now, this is your 8th chain. You're adding 2 bands, one at a time. Back in. And you're going to repeat, again, 7 chains, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, with 1 band in each. Now on the 8th chain, you're adding 2 bands, one at a time. So back in. And let's do this again. 7 single crochets followed by an increase. Then your increase, back in. And you're going to repeat this one more time. When you get to your stitch marker, you're adding your 2 bands. At my last stitch where my stitch marker is, and I have my 2 bands. So back in. So again, you should have 36 stitches. You're going to start to notice that it's going to curl in different directions. When you're done with the body, this is all going to go out nicely. So don't worry that if yours looks like this. You're going to remove your stitch marker because you have 36 stitches, and you're going to add your stitch marker to the band that's around your hook. Okay, for the next 16 rounds, you're going to do 36 single crochets. So adding 1 band to each chain. 1, 1, 1, 1, all the way around. I'm going to do round 6 with you, and then you're going to pause the video to continue the rest of the rounds and then come back to me when you're done. The bands didn't fit in each pile. Each round you'll need 36 bands. So I'm just going to move these out of the way. So all the way to round 21. And we're going to do 36 single crochets. The stitch markers are there because I like to leave the stitch markers when I'm doing so many rounds that are the same. So in case I do get distracted, I know which round I'm at. So let's go ahead. I have 36 bands here, and I'm going to do round 6. So we're going to go in our first chain, not where it's getting pulled, and we're adding our first band to do a single crochet. Oops. Now continue going around, adding 1 band in each. So you're going to do this until you get to the stitch marker. I like to leave my stitch markers, like I said, and then just add another one. The shape of this is going to look weird for the next, I think, 6 rounds. And then it just fixes it, I can't even say it, fixes itself up and turns out great. So I know this was a concern for some of yous. It fixes. On the other minions I meant. So you're just adding 1 band. Every couple of rounds, do check the amount of stitches that you have to make sure that you didn't start in the wrong stitch. You started in the next one over, not where it's getting pulled. You went all the way. You just want to make sure that you have 36 stitches because the rest of his outfit might not fit. So I'm done the round, and this is where I'm going to add another stitch marker to the band that's around my hook. This end, you can pause the video now and come back to me when you're at round 21. So now we're at round 22, and this is what your minion body should look like. For round 22, I'm going to decrease this round to 32 stitches. So this is the pattern. You're going to do 7 single crochets, 1 band in the first 7 chains. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 7 times. Then on the 8th, you're going to do an invisible decrease. So I'm adding a second band. And when we get to that part, I will show you how we're going to do that. So we're going to decrease. Then you're going to repeat 7 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. Then you're going to repeat for a 3rd time with an invisible decrease using an extra band. Then we're going to do it one more time. So you're just repeating the pattern 4 times. So let's go on our first chain, not where it's getting pulled, and we're going to add our first band. Then you're going to do that for 7 times, 1 band in each chain. So that was 1, chain 1, chain 2, chain 3, chain 4, just with a single crochet, chain 5, chain 6, and chain 7. Now for the invisible decrease. I'm going to do 2 slip stitches, 1 in each of the chains, the next 2 chains. So I'm going in my next chain. This is chain 8. Normally you could take chain 8 and chain 9 and stitch together, but I like how clean this finishes. So I'm going to go in chain 8, take my first band, and I'm going to do a slip stitch. So both on my hook, both ends, do a slip stitch, and I'm going to leave that on my hook. So I have 2 loops. Now I'm going in the next stitch, leaving these on my hook. I'm going to repeat by doing a slip stitch. So I have 3 loops on my hook. Now if you take this one at the tip of your hook and slide, you've just decreased. From 3 stitches, you just went down to that 2. Now we're going to repeat. So 1 band in the next 7 chains. Now for our decrease, I'm going in my next chain to do that slip stitch and leave it on my hook. The next chain, repeat with a slip stitch and leave it on your hook. Now you're going to slide. Now we're going to repeat 7 single crochets. Let me see if I can move this pattern up. 7 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. So 1 band in the next 7 chains. Invisible decrease, so slip stitch in the next 2 chains. Now, again, we're going to repeat the pattern. I'm just going to move these up. So 7 single crochets, and your last 2 chains we're going to stitch together with our invisible decrease. Last 2 stitches, invisible decrease. So I'm going to do a slip stitch, leave it on my hook, and the last stitch where your stitch marker is, another slip stitch, leave it on your hook, 3 loops, and slide. Now you should have 32 stitches. We're going to remove our stitch marker and add it to the band that's on around our hook. For round 23, we're going to decrease. So this is the pattern. 1, 1, followed by an invisible decrease. So you're doing 2 single crochets with an invisible decrease. Then you're going to repeat 2 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. So I add 2 bands when I'm decreasing. And then you're just going to repeat 2 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. So that's like taking chains 3 and 4 and stitching together. But these ones I'm using an extra band. So at the end of round 23, you're going to have 24 stitches. So let's go on our first 2 chains with just 1 band, doing a single crochet in each. Now if you want, you can take 3 and 4 and stitch together, but I'm doing that invisible decrease, so I'm going to do a slip stitch in my next chain 2, slip stitch, 3 loops around my hook, and I'm going to slide. There's my decrease. So let's repeat 2 single crochets, 1, and then another, followed by an invisible decrease. Three loops and slide. Repeat the pattern, 1, 1, decrease. Three loops and slide. Now just continue all the way around until you get to your stitch marker. One last time. 3 loops and slide, and you can remove your stitch marker, add it to the band that's around your neck, and again, you should have 24 stitches. For round 24, we're going to make this round even smaller again. The pattern is going to be 1 single crochet followed by an invisible decrease. So I'm adding an extra band. So that's like taking stitch 2 and 3 and stitching together. Repeat single crochet followed by an invisible decrease. So I'm just adding an extra band. You're repeating this pattern 8 times. So at the end of round 24, you're going to have 16 stitches. When we're done this round, we're going to be adding some stuffing and filling it. So let's get started in our first chain, not where it's getting pulled. You want to go in your first chain and just add 1 band. So 1 single crochet. Now for an invisible decrease, we're going to do a slip stitch in the next 2 chains. Leave it on your hook. You have 2 loops, go to the next chain, do an slip stitch. So you have 3 loops and slide. Repeat your pattern. Make sure you don't go in the same chain. 1 single crochet followed by your invisible decrease. Three loops and slide. Repeat. 1. The next chain, you're starting your invisible decrease. Next stitch with your slip stitch. You have 3 loops and slide. Now you're just going to repeat the pattern all the way until you get to the stitch marker. Now you should have 16 stitches. Remove your stitch marker, add it to the band that's around your hook. You may want to push this up just a little bit and grab some stuffing to fill. Now I can stuff this one pretty good just because of the shape that it's in. So be careful. You want to make sure that you add just the right amount. You want to move it around inside so that you don't have those empty gaps, and you can pretty much fill this until you start seeing the stuffing coming out of the bands. You don't want that to happen. So I'm just like literally just opening it up, moving the stuffing around, and then you can check to make sure after if you overstuffed it. All you have to do is just roll it, move the stuffing around with your fingers, and I'm pretty sure I just overstuffed this. I'm just moving all the stuffing to the edges. I have like this opening down here, so I am going to put some more stuffing inside. and that should be okay. Maybe a little bit more. For round 25, we are going to do an invisible decrease to each stitch. So I'm going to decrease this round to 8 stitches when we're done. So right now, it's as if you were going to stitch 1 and 2 and stitch together. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an invisible decrease. So your first 2 chains, we're going to decrease. So I'm going to do a slip stitch in each, and then do an invisible decrease. So I'm just adding my extra bands, and we'll get started. So I'm just going to push this back down, and I'm going to go in my first chain and do a slip stitch, so I'm not where it's getting pulled. And that slip stitch I'm going to leave on my hook and go on to the next stitch and then do that slip stitch. So I have the 3 loops and slide. The next 2, again, an invisible decrease, slip stitch, leave it on the hook, go to the next, slip stitch, 3 loops, and slide. You want to continue this all the way around until you get to the stitch marker. And slide. My last 2 stitches, same thing, an invisible decrease. And slide. Remove your stitch marker, add it to the band that's around your hook. For round 26, we're going to close this off till we have 0 stitches. I'm going to do an invisible decrease to each stitch around. So my first 2 stitches, I'm going to stitch together. And I'm just going to do this 4 times until I get to the stitch marker. When I get to the stitch marker, I'm going to use another band to do a slip knot in my next stitch to tie it closed. So let's make sure we're going in our first stitch, which are off to the side here, not where it's getting pulled. And we're going to do our invisible decrease. The next stitch. And slide. All this, when you're seeing it open, that's all going to disappear as soon as we move it around. Our next stitch, our invisible decrease, we're going to start with the slip stitch. The next stitch, slip stitch, all the way around till you get to that stitch marker. I'm right where this stitch marker is. I'm doing my invisible decrease. And I'm just going to go to the next stitch over, grab a single band, and I'm going to do a slip knot to tie it closed. And remove your stitch marker. Now all you want to do is just move around your stuffing. And move your bands around. and then it's okay. So the body is complete.